Times in the affairs of nations when great principles are tested in an ordeal of conflict and danger. This is such a time for American nation. At stake are the lives of thousands, the liberty of a nation, and the principles and the values of all the American republics. And that is why the hopes and the concern of this entire hemisphere are on this Sabbath Sunday focused on the Dominican Republic.
Have you ever wondered why so many Dominicans call New York City home? The answer lies in a turbulent chapter of Dominican history, the Civil War of the 1960s. In this video, you'll learn about the dramatic events that led to the mass immigration of Dominicans to New York City. After the assassination of the dictator Rafael Trujillo, the Dominican Republic was thrust into chaos. How did Juan Bosch, a key figure, contribute to the downfall of this dictatorship? And what political divisions sparked a civil war that would catch the attention of the world? This period not only changed the Dominican Republic forever, but also set the stage for the migration waves that brought so many Dominicans to the United States. How did these events influence the lives of those who left their homeland in search of a better future? Join us as we delve into the Civil War of the 1960s, exploring the aftermath of Trujillo's death, the rise of Juan Bosch, the political turmoil that ensued, and the United States' controversial role in ending the conflict. Before we get started, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned. After Rafael Trujillo's assassination, many of those involved in the plot were quickly killed. General Antonio Imbert Barrera was one of the few survivors among Trujillo's assassins. He would go on to play a crucial role in the Civil War shortly after, but more on him later. For now, I want to introduce you to an important character in this story. In the midst of this chaos, Juan Bosch emerged as a key figure in helping shape the country. Bosch, the founder of the Dominican Revolutionary Party in 1939, was a longtime opponent of Trujillo's regime. Bosch had a long history of resistance, including organizing the failed Cayo Confites expedition in 1947, which aimed to overthrow Trujillo. After its failure, he fled to Venezuela and continued his anti-Trujillo campaign. In Cuba, Bosch played a significant role in Havana's political scene, and later in Costa Rica, he continued his work as a leader of the PRD. Bosch's dedication to social justice and democracy made him a pivotal figure in Dominican history. After Trujillo's death, Bosch was elected president in 1962, promising a new era for the Dominican Republic. A passionate nationalist with liberal leanings, Bosch's vision for the Dominican Republic was rooted in progressive ideals. Bosch's government quickly pushed to enact a democratic constitution that guaranteed the activities of all political parties and granted new rights to workers, including a share in company profits. He pushed for families to own homes and established equal rights for all children, regardless of legitimacy. Unfortunately, despite being the first democratically elected president of the Dominican Republic, his time in office only lasted 7 months before being overthrown in a coup. But who were the forces behind this coup, and why did they act against Bosch? The coup was sparked by Brigadier General Elias Wessany Wesson and Antonio Imbert Barrera, which was supported by conservative Dominicans. These groups were disturbed by Bosch's failure to suppress communists, his ambitious land and property reforms, and his efforts to reduce corruption in the armed forces. Bosch's progressive policies, including his land reforms and attempts to cut military power, threatened the status quo. The military and elite were not ready for these changes and feared losing their privileges. The Dominican people, who had experienced political and personal freedoms under Bosch, were restless and unhappy with the coup. Plots and counterplots became the order of the day, leading to a period of significant instability. On the one hand, you had the constitutionalists who wanted to reinstate Bosch's socialist-leaning constitution, and in the other hand, you had loyalists still clinging to the power they held under Trujillo's 30-year regime. On September 25, 1963, the coup led by General Wessany Wesson, General Antonio Imbert Barrera, and other military leaders established a 3-man military junta. Bosch was deported to Guadeloupe on September 28 and later moved to Puerto Rico in exile.
Óiganlo bien, señores de la reacción. imposibilitan la lucha pacífica del pueblo. El 14 de junio sabe muy bien dónde están las escarpadas montañas de Quisqueya. ¡A ellas iremos! Y en ellas mantendremos encendida la antorcha de la libertad, la justicia, el espíritu de la revolución.
December 21st, 1963, a day that would leave an undeniable mark on the nation. Manolo Tavarez, a key revolutionary figure since the days of Trujillo's regime, was killed. His death ignited a firestorm of rage across the country, setting off a chain of events that would lead to greater unrest. The assassination of Tavarez sent shockwaves through the Dominican Republic. President Emilio de los Santos, who had taken over from Juan Bosch, found himself unable to quell the growing discontent. He was soon ousted, and Donald Reed Cabral stepped in to lead the nation. But Reed's rule was fraught with challenges as he governed under a triumvirate that included Generals Wessany Wessons and Antonio Imbert Barrera. Under Reed's administration, political tension simmered dangerously. On April 24, 1965, this tension reached a boiling point. President Reed revoked the commissions of young officers suspected of plotting a coup. The response was swift and fierce. These officers, calling themselves constitutionalists, revolted. They quickly rallied around 1,500 soldiers and elite Navy frogmen to their cause. The constitutionalists took to the airwaves, making passionate radio announcements and distributing 20,000 weapons throughout Santo Domingo. They targeted police stations, rival political buildings, and seized strategic positions across the city. Meanwhile, Reed's loyal forces, though numbering over 17,000, were fractured and disorganized. Only General Wessany Wesson's 1,500 soldiers and elements of the Dominican Air Force were ready to defend the government. Violence erupted in the streets. The chaos and bloodshed were widespread as both sides fought for control. The conflict was escalating rapidly, with no end in sight.
Formamos un verdadero frente patriótico para defender lo que con tanta sangre nuestros gloriosos muertos nos han dado. Mantengámonos unidos, dominicanos, y podremos conseguir en el menor tiempo posible una verdadera democracia y las verdaderas libertades y las verdaderas ganancias que el pueblo, con su lucha y con su sangre, tan duramente tiene que conseguir. Que se mantenga en nuestro espíritu que han muerto más de 3.500 dominicanos. Que se mantenga en nuestro espíritu que nosotros estamos obligados a defender el futuro de los dominicanos vivos. Que se mantenga en nuestro espíritu que los dominicanos civiles y los dominicanos militares unidos hemos defendido este país y ganaremos nuestra libertad.
On April 28, 1965, the Constitutionalists, led by Colonel Caamano, succeeded in removing the triumvirate junta from power. The situation was dire and demanded immediate international attention. The escalating civil war caught the eye of the United States. Fearing the spread of communism and seeking to stabilize the region, the U.S. launched Operation Power Pack. They dispatched 42,000 troops to the Dominican Republic, hoping to broker peace between the warring factions. However, this intervention only served to further intensify the conflict. The stage was now set for a brutal conflict that would shape the future of the Dominican Republic. The seeds of unrest had grown into a full-blown civil war, drawing the attention of the world. To fully understand the conclusion of the Dominican Civil War, we must explore the dramatic intervention of the United States. How did American involvement change the course of the conflict? And what was life like for Dominicans caught in the crossfire?
Another call for help, now from the Dominican Republic, as rebel forces turn Santo Domingo into a battlefield. The Dominican government informs our ambassador that the safety of Americans and citizens of other nations can no longer be guaranteed. Again, prompt, decisive response. We landed sufficient forces into the city and deployed them to protect our citizens and those of other countries requesting protection. American civilians and other nationals requesting safe passage were transported to the airfield under military escort. In a still dangerous situation, we continue to deploy our protective troops along the city's streets. And then, as the Organization of American States designated a five-nation team to restore order, we began to withdraw our military forces. This assistance to the Dominican Republic extended far beyond military aid. It meant the distribution of food to the hungry. It also meant medical care to young and old alike, all part of our determined plan to aid the distressed, rescue the trapped, and speed assistance to independent nations seeking help.
The United States intervened in the Dominican Republic out of a fear of communism spreading, much like it had in Cuba. As the political unrest grew, U.S. diplomats began preparing to evacuate 3,500 American citizens. Early on April 27, 1965, 1,176 foreign civilians were airlifted from the Hotel Embajador to the naval facility at Bajos de Jaina. From there, they were evacuated to safety by helicopters and ships. It all began on April 24, 1965. 3 junior officers, after being refused a meeting with President Donald Reed Cabral, detained the Chief of Staff and seized the Radio Santo Domingo building. This act sparked a revolution. The Constitutionalists, led by Colonel Francisco Caamano, distributed weapons and called for nationwide rebellion. With law and order breaking down, rebels attacked the National Police and laid siege to key locations. They overran Fortaleza Ozama, taking 700 prisoners. The city descended into chaos, prompting the arrival of American forces to restore order. On April 30th, 1965, the 82nd Airborne Division landed at San Isidro Air Base, marking the start of Operation Power Pack. Within hours, more troops and heavy equipment followed, aiming to secure the capital and restore stability. The American troops faced fierce resistance. The Constitutionalists used machine guns and mortars against U.S. outposts. The fighting was intense, and both sides suffered heavy casualties. To trap the rebels and establish control, American forces moved to secure key bridges and create a safe corridor for supplies and communication. This strategy effectively separated the warring factions and paved the way for negotiations. On May 6, 1965, the Organization of American States established the Inter-American Peace Force, a multinational peacekeeping force to help stabilize the situation. This force included troops from Brazil, Paraguay, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Honduras. Despite efforts for peace, the fighting continued. On June 15, 1966, the Constitutionalists launched a final attack on U.S. outposts, resulting in the bloodiest battle of the intervention. Yet by September 21, 1966, after overseeing a peaceful transfer of power to Joaquin Balaguer, the last American forces withdrew. The first post-war elections were held on July 1, 1966. Joaquin Balaguer, with U.S. support, emerged victorious. He promised reconciliation and led the nation towards stability. The last OAS peacekeepers left in September 1966, marking the end of foreign intervention. While the intervention ended, its impact on the Dominican Republic was profound. the nation had to rebuild and heal from the scars of war, striving for a future of peace and stability. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Also, check these videos right here for more on Dominican history.